My name is Claire Whitaker, 32 years old from suburban Indiana. He left me without a word, then showed up months later on my sister's arm. I thought I'd moved on. But when I found out they'd been lying, scheming, and stealing behind my back, I stopped grieving, and started planning. You won't believe how far family betrayal can go, until it's personal. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more true-to-life stories filled with betrayal, revenge, and shocking twists you won't see coming. Turn on notifications so you never miss a chapter. And now, let me tell you what really happened when my ex showed up on my sister's arm, and thought I wouldn't fight back. The first thing I noticed was the sound of her boots, loud, careless, echoing through the entryway like she owned the place. Lauren always made an entrance. Even now, at 26, she had the same chaotic energy she'd carried since high school, like a storm wrapped in lip gloss and denim. "Claire," she shouted from the front hall. "Where's Mom?" "In the garden," I called back from the kitchen, hands deep in a mixing bowl. "Tomatoes again." Lauren rounded the corner and tossed her duffel bag on the floor with a dramatic sigh. "She's obsessed. She's retired. She's bored." I gave her a side glance. Same old Lauren. Same chipped blue nail polish, oversized sunglasses perched on her head. And the faint scent of department store perfume trailing behind her. She hadn't changed, and maybe that's why I didn't see it coming. We made small talk while I prepped a lemon cake for Mom's Sunday potluck. Lauren leaned on the counter, sipping an iced coffee she'd picked up from the cafe on 38th. Her fingers tapped nervously on the side of the plastic cup, then, too casually, "So, I've been seeing someone." I didn't flinch. Not at first. "Anyone serious?" Her lips curled. "Yeah. Actually. It's kind of wild." She paused, like she was savoring it. Like she'd rehearsed the line, "His name's Ethan." The name dropped like a bomb in my chest. My hands froze in the batter. I turned slowly. "Ethan who?" Her eyes lit up with something, glee, maybe. Or cruelty. "Ethan Kavanaugh." I stared at her, blinking, waiting for the punchline that never came. "You mean my Ethan? Ethan who I dated for 3 years? Ethan who walked out without a word 6 months ago?" She gave a faux apologetic smile. "Didn't think you'd care anymore. You said it was over." I didn't say, "Feel free to date my ex." "Oh, come on, Claire." She crossed her arms. "You're acting like I stole your boyfriend. You broke up." "No," I said, my voice low. "He dumped me. After 3 years. And you're, what? Just stepping in?" She shrugged. "It just happened. Don't make it weird." I felt my stomach turn. Not from jealousy. From something colder, something ancient and bitter. It wasn't the first time Lauren had crossed a line. But this one was different. This one had claws. She turned to leave the kitchen, her ponytail swinging. "Mom doesn't know yet. You'll keep it cool, right?" I didn't answer, because in that moment, something in me shifted. Snapped. My little sister had walked through the front door like she always did, carefree, smiling, and selfish, but this time, she brought a secret, one that would unravel everything, and I knew one thing for sure: Lauren hadn't come home by accident. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan as it spun slow circles, each rotation pulling me deeper into a sick feeling I couldn't shake. I wasn't heartbroken, not anymore. But I wasn't numb, either. This wasn't about Ethan. This was about Lauren. About betrayal wrapped in a red dress and a sugar-sweet smile. His name echoed in my head like a taunt: Ethan. Ethan Kavanaugh. He hadn't called. Not once. After 3 years, I got a half-hearted breakup speech and silence. And now, he was sleeping with my sister. I got up around 2 a.m., padded barefoot to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. The house was dark except for the soft glow of the porch light. Everything was still. But my thoughts were racing. Why didn't Lauren tell me sooner? Why had she really come home? The next morning, I got my answer. Mom decided we should all have brunch together, like old times. Lauren bounced into the kitchen in one of my old sweaters, humming some indie tune as if nothing had happened. I stared at her over my coffee. How long? I asked. She tilted her head. What? You and Ethan. She smiled over the rim of her mug. Couple months. We reconnected. He reached out after you guys split. I clenched my jaw. He dumped me in May. She didn't blink. Yeah. June, maybe? That's a month later, Lauren. She shrugged like that somehow made it better. Timing's messy. No. You're messy. Her eyes hardened just enough to remind me she wasn't as ditzy as she pretended. It's not my fault you couldn't keep him interested. That hit harder than I expected. The way she said it. Like she'd been waiting to say it. I stood, pushing my chair back slowly. Be careful, I said. Lauren laughed. What, are you threatening me? I leaned in close. No. I'm warning you. You think you're the first one he's lied to? She flinched, just slightly. Enough to tell me she didn't know everything. Good, let her feel what it's like to be kept in the dark. Later that afternoon, I saw his car, black Ford Escape. Parked at the curb, engine off. Lauren ran out to greet him like they were in a damn rom-com. She threw her arms around his neck, kissed him hard. Then she looked up, and saw me standing at the window, our eyes locked. Hers were smug, but his changed, a flicker of panic. Recognition, and then he smiled. But I knew that smile, I'd seen it before, when he lied about money, about work, about the woman who was just a friend. Lauren didn't know it yet, but Ethan Kavanaugh wasn't her new beginning. He was a loaded gun, and she was playing with the safety off. And me, I was the one who already knew how it ended. The next morning, I found Lauren in the sunroom, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. She had her feet up on Mom's wicker table, shoes on, of course, and a half-eaten bagel balanced on her knee. She looked up at me with that same lopsided grin she'd worn since we were kids. The one that always meant trouble. The one that made you second-guess what you thought you knew. Morning, sunshine, she said, voice syrupy sweet. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Did you sleep well? She stretched, cat-like. Like a baby. Ethan dropped me off around 11. You must have already been sulking in bed by then. I ignored the jab and sat down across from her. The cushion hissed under me as I sank into it. Why'd you really come home, Lauren? She blinked, then tilted her head like I'd asked about the weather. What do you mean? I mean, I said slowly, you haven't visited in 6 months. You ghosted on Mom's birthday. And now you waltz in, wearing my sweater, dating my ex, acting like nothing happened. She tapped her phone screen and smirked. Maybe I missed home. No, you missed attention. Her smile widened. Just a bit too sharp. Oh Claire, always so dramatic. You're acting like I stole your husband. You might as well have. We stared at each other, neither of us blinking. There was something behind her eyes, something cruel and calculated. It wasn't just sibling rivalry anymore. It was something colder. She'd planned this. Lauren had always been impulsive, but this felt precise. Surgical. Like she'd found my one soft spot and pressed into it until it bruised. And now, she was enjoying the ache. You want to know what I think? She said, voice low and lazy. I think you're just mad because he chose me. I laughed once, sharp and bitter. Chose you? He doesn't choose. He uses. You think you're special? You're just the next one in line. Her jaw twitched, just enough to reveal a crack in the performance. But she recovered fast. You're just jealous he finally found someone who won't bore him. I stood. You're not a threat, Lauren. You're a target. And if you weren't so desperate to beat me, you might have seen that. She opened her mouth to fire back, but I didn't give her the chance. I walked out of the sunroom, out of the house, and down the block before my vision cleared. The wind was brisk, biting through my jacket as I headed toward the park. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I needed air. Distance. Time to think, because Lauren's smile said this wasn't random, and if she thought she could waltz in and steal the one person who broke me, she clearly didn't remember who taught her how to play dirty. I wasn't proud of it. Stalking your little sister across town like some bitter ex wasn't exactly a flattering look. But I had to see it for myself. My gut had been screaming since she showed up. This thing between her and Ethan wasn't new. It wasn't random. And it sure as hell wasn't innocent, so when Lauren said she was going to meet a friend in Broad Ripple, I followed. I stayed a few cars behind her aging silver Corolla, driving like a cautious shadow through the quiet streets of suburban Indiana. Fall was just starting to settle in, crimson leaves drifting from the oaks, crisp winds slipping through the cracked window of my Civic. She turned onto a residential road near the canal and pulled into the driveway of a small brick house with blue shutters. I parked across the street, hidden behind a large maple tree. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I watched her get out, smooth her hair, and glance, check herself, in the rearview mirror. Then she walked up to the door, confident, comfortable, like she'd done it 100 times before. It opened before she even knocked. Ethan stood there, leaning against the frame like he was posing for a magazine. Same tousled hair. Same smug half-smile that used to make me melt. Now it made my skin crawl. She stepped inside, and he pulled her close without hesitation, hands on her waist. Lips brushing her temple, and then they kissed, not quick. Not uncertain, familiar. I felt something break in my chest. Not heartbreak, just a raw kind of clarity. This wasn't new. This wasn't a month-old accident like Lauren claimed. They'd been seeing each other while he was still with me. My hand tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I snapped a photo with my phone. Not for revenge. Not yet. But I needed to remember this moment. I needed to hold on to how it felt, to be erased like I was nothing. 15 minutes passed before they emerged again. Laughing. Her head resting on his shoulder like they'd been together for years, and then, as they walked toward his car. Lauren paused. She looked up, directly across the street, her eyes locked onto mine. She didn't look shocked. Or guilty, she smiled, slow. Crooked. Cold, like this was a game, like she'd won, and in that second, I knew the truth. Lauren hadn't stumbled into Ethan's arms. She'd aimed for him. She didn't want my leftovers. She wanted my destruction. But she'd forgotten something important. I wasn't the fragile girl Ethan left behind. And if they thought they could bury me, they better hope I didn't dig up what they tried to hide. By the time I got back to the house, my hands were trembling, part adrenaline, part rage. Lauren and Ethan weren't just together. They were flaunting it. They wanted me to see. That smile across the street wasn't the grin of a sister in love. It was a shot across the bow, and I wasn't going to sit back and let it hit. I opened my laptop the second I got to my room, my fingers moving faster than my thoughts. I started with Ethan's name, full name, Ethan Raymond Kavanaugh, and dug through public records, old social media accounts, forgotten blogs, whatever I could find. The deeper I went, the more the cracks started to show. 2 previous jobs in finance, both with quiet exits. A former coworker's LinkedIn comment called him brilliant but shady. That led me to an archived company newsletter from a real estate investment firm in Bloomington, Ethan's name in a list of terminations, all swept under the rug during a department restructure. It didn't sit right. So I kept going, and then I found it, an old court filing, sealed, but not well enough. Buried under layers of docket numbers and generic titles was a fraud investigation. 2 years ago. The charges were never made public. Settled out of court with restitution. But Ethan had been accused of embezzling over $25,000 from a senior client portfolio. I sat back, heart thudding. He never told me. Not once in 3 years, but he told Lauren. He had to have. She didn't just accidentally waltz into a relationship with someone like him. She'd either believed his lies, or helped him build more. I remembered the little things. How Ethan had suddenly started talking about investment opportunities in his last year with me. How Lauren once asked me offhand about ways to move money without being taxed. How she suddenly had a new designer bag last Christmas, even though she'd been between jobs. God. How deep did this go? I pulled up my old banking app. Ethan and I had shared a joint account for household expenses when we were together. I hadn't touched it since the breakup, but I hadn't closed it either. Stupid, sentimental me. The balance was zero. Worse, there were transfers. Recent ones, and Lauren's name appeared as a memo on 2 of them. That was the moment I knew. They weren't just dating, they were working together. Whether she knew the full scope or not didn't matter. My sister had helped the man who stole from me, and now, possibly, from others. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. The hum of the screen still in my ears. They thought they were smarter. They thought I wouldn't look. They thought they could get away with it. But the game had started now. And this time, I wasn't playing defense. I'd spent 3 nights obsessing over every detail, checking bank statements, revisiting digital trails, calling in a favor from an old friend who owed me after a nasty divorce. By the end of it, I had enough evidence to bury Ethan and drag Lauren down with him. But I didn't want to hand it all over, not yet. Not before I saw the look on their faces when they realized they'd walked straight into a trap of their own making. So I did what they'd never expect. I called Lauren. And I invited them both to dinner, just us, I said brightly. I've been thinking. Maybe it's time we moved on. She hesitated, and I could almost hear her mind clicking behind the silence. You're serious? As a heart attack. I didn't miss the smug lift in her voice when she agreed. She thought I was breaking. She thought she'd won. Perfect. I spent all Saturday preparing. Not just the food, though I made Ethan's favorite. Like salt in a wound, but the real ingredients were upstairs in my printer tray, doctor documents. Convincing spreadsheets. Mock-up contracts. A fabricated business proposal for a mobile pet therapy startup I designed to look like a gold mine. I knew how to sell it. Hell, I worked in logistics. I just adjusted the tone, threw in phrases like low-risk high-yield and pre-approved investor guarantees. All things that would make someone like Ethan salivate, and someone like Lauren feel important. They showed up 10 minutes late, arm in arm like they were royalty. Lauren wore red, of course she did, and Ethan had on that same smug leather jacket I once loved. I smiled and hugged them both like none of it mattered. Dinner was pleasant. Laughter floated through the kitchen like perfume. I watched them eat, watched Lauren kiss Ethan's cheek, watched Ethan steal glances at the wine like he was calculating how much he could drink before he lost control. Then, over dessert, I brought it up. I've been working on something new, I said, casually sliding the envelope across the table. A business. A real investment opportunity. Ethan perked up like a hound catching scent. Really? I nodded, tapping the folder. Mobile pet therapy, schools, senior homes, hospitals. The groundwork's laid. I just need capital to expand. How much capital? He asked. 10,000 minimum. I've already got 2 people in. I thought of you too because, well, family. Lauren's eyes lit up. You trust us with this? I tilted my head. Shouldn't I? They exchanged a look. I saw the greed sparkle behind Ethan's cool exterior. He believed I was still the naive girl he left behind. Sounds promising, he said, then you'll love the projections. They didn't read everything, of course. People like them never do. They left 2 hours later, holding hands and full of lies. By Monday, the money hit the dummy account I'd set up under the fake LLC name, and just like that, the trap was sprung. Now all I had to do was watch them fall. The first transfer came in just after 9 a.m. Monday morning, $10,000 wired from an account under Ethan's name to the fake LLC I'd registered the week before. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, breath caught between disbelief and vindication. He actually did it. Hook, line, and greedy little sinker. 2 hours later, Lauren's name popped up on a second transfer, smaller, $2,500, but with a memo that read, for shares in Powell. I almost laughed. I watched the numbers light up in my dashboard and imagined them high-fiving each other in some smug celebration. Ethan probably had that sly glint in his eye, whispering that they were finally in on the ground floor of something legit. Lauren, always wanting to prove she could be more than the mess-up of the family, had bought the illusion like a kid at a magic show. What they didn't know was that every document I'd given them was a lie, beautifully designed, legally hollow, and riddled with metadata that traced back to Ethan's laptop. And the business account? Registered under a dummy corporation linked to an old email he once used when we were together, one I had recovered using a forgotten password he never changed. I'd spent weeks laying the breadcrumbs. Now, they were following them straight off a cliff. The next few days passed in tense silence. I didn't text. I didn't call. I waited, and like clockwork. Lauren cracked first. "Hey," she messaged Tuesday night. "Did you get the deposit? Ethan says the docs looked good. Can we talk about next steps?" I ignored it. Let her twist in the quiet. By Thursday, she called. Twice. I let it ring, and that was when I sent the email, anonymously, of course. With screenshots of the transfers, the fake business proposal, and the altered documents, all pointing to intent to commit fraud. It went to the IRS, flagged under financial misconduct and suspicious activity between close relations. I'd CC'd the firm where Ethan was quietly trying to land a new job. A little insurance, then I waited. Friday morning, while I sipped my coffee, I watched a black SUV park across the street from Ethan's rental. 2 men in plain suits stepped out. Federal types. A few minutes later, a knock on his door. Lauren opened it. Even from across the street, I could see the color drain from her face. She stepped aside. They entered, and everything went quiet. I didn't gloat. Not yet. I didn't smile, didn't cry. Just stared at the mug in my hand and let the warmth spread through my fingers. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about control. About taking back what they tried to steal, my name. My peace, my dignity. They thought they'd made a sweet transaction, but the sugar was laced, and now it was their turn to choke. By the time the news hit the local paper's digital blotter, financial misconduct investigated in local investment scam, Ethan was already gone. He didn't run. He evaporated. One moment he was posing with Lauren at the farmer's market, hand on her lower back like a promise. The next, his car was missing, his phone disconnected, and his house stripped of anything that could tie him to real life. Lauren showed up at my doorstep 2 days later, mascara smudged, eyes swollen, still in the red coat she always wore when she wanted to feel powerful. But today, she just looked small. "He left me," she said. No greeting. No shame. Just raw panic. "He's gone. He cleaned out my savings. I think he forged my signature on some forms." I leaned on the doorframe. "You think?" She flinched. "They froze my accounts, Claire. I went to buy gas and my card declined." "My card. Sounds like a sweet transaction," I said calmly, letting the phrase linger like poison between us. Her lips trembled. "This wasn't supposed to happen." "No," I said. "You thought I was supposed to break. You thought I'd just fade into the background while you paraded around with the man who gutted my life. I didn't know." "Yes, you did. You didn't care." She opened her mouth, but I wasn't interested in hearing the revised version of her truth. "You didn't want Ethan, Lauren. You wanted to win. You wanted to hurt me, and now look, you're bleeding too." Tears slipped down her cheeks, ruining whatever illusion of control she'd walked in with. "They're going to charge me, Claire," she whispered. I gave them my name. My ID. I helped with transfers. "I didn't know it was fake. Please, you have to help me." And there it was. The ask. For a second, I stared at the girl who used to braid my hair and sneak into my room when the thunder scared her. The same girl who now sat across from IRS investigators because she fell for the same charm I once did, and weaponized it against me. "You made your choice," I said quietly. "So did I." I closed the door, slow. Clean. Final. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, watching rain stripe the windows. Ethan was gone, probably halfway across the country with a burner phone and a new name. But he'd left damage behind, and for once, it wasn't mine to carry. Lauren would face the music. Maybe not prison, but enough public embarrassment and financial fallout to feel it for years. I wasn't broken. I was deliberate. I had waited, planned, and watched the whole thing fall like rotten fruit. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers, and sometimes, it wears your sister's face. The reservoir looked the same as it had 7 years ago, calm, expansive, and quietly deceptive. The kind of place where things went to disappear, time, memories, maybe even versions of yourself you'd rather forget. I parked at the overlook and stepped out into the wind, letting the cool air sting my cheeks. Leaves skittered across the gravel, and the sky hung heavy with gray. It was peaceful in that eerie, suspended way that only comes when everything has already fallen apart. This was where Ethan first told me he loved me. Right there, on the worn wooden bench by the fence line, beneath the birch tree that bent like it was listening. I'd believed him. Every word. Every crooked smile. But the truth was, Ethan never really loved anything he couldn't use. And Lauren, she never really hated me. She just needed to beat me. For once. At something, I sat down on the bench, exhaling deeply. It felt different now, no longer sacred. No longer stained. Just a place. A marker in time. A reminder of how far I'd come. It wasn't about revenge anymore. That fire had burned itself out the moment I closed the door on Lauren's tear-streaked face. Justice had come and gone. And while she dealt with frozen accounts and public shame, I was here, free. I'd finally stopped carrying their weight. A soft rustle made me turn my head. A mother and daughter were walking the trail, laughing, the girl skipping ahead and throwing leaves in the air. The mother called after her, laughing, "Stay where I can see you." I watched them disappear around the bend. That used to be me and Lauren. Back when the world was small and love didn't hurt. Before men like Ethan. Before lies and forged papers and sweet-smiled betrayals. Back when we were just girls. But time doesn't rewind, and some sisters don't come back. I stood, brushing off my jeans, and walked down to the water's edge. The reservoir lapped gently against the rocks, unbothered by all that had played out while it sat still. And maybe that was the lesson. Some things remain unmoved, no matter the storm. I took a photo of the water. Not for social media. Not for anyone else. Just for me, a timestamp. A final page. I walked back to the car with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Not the smug satisfaction of winning, but the quiet steadiness of surviving. I wasn't the woman Ethan left. I wasn't the sister Lauren betrayed. I was someone they hadn't expected, stronger. Wiser. Unshaken, and as I pulled out of the overlook and drove away, I didn't look in the rearview mirror, because the past didn't own me anymore. My name was mine again, and I was finally, free. If that story gave you chills, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping tales of betrayal, revenge, and the unexpected strength that rises from the ashes. Let me know in the comments. What would you have done if your sister stole your ex?